است که سازمان‌های خانم‌ها نتورک زن‌ها یا شبکه‌های زن‌ها وجود دارند.
Prior to the Taliban's resurgence in 2021, female journalists were a prominent presence in the Afghan media, symbolizing an unprecedented progress in the country's tumultuous history of experimenting with liberal ideas. In the nearly 3 years since then, the country's media scene has unrecognizably changed. Close to half of Afghanistan's 600 media outlets have shut down. The remaining ones struggle to survive, minimizing programs as financial constraints continuously push them to downsize. Female journalists are particularly affected, losing jobs at scale and confined to their homes, multiplying the effects of the regime's campaign to remove women from public life. The same night, Balkh province fell. After that, I couldn't return to work. The manager contacted me and said that the outlet had closed down. After the Taliban entered Kabul, we initially stayed home out of fear. Later, we were told to return to work. But the Taliban started being strict with any single woman they found out was a journalist, questioning every day why families allowed us to work outside the home. The Taliban even told us why we were single. Despite the limitations, we continued our work until a female journalist was expelled from the newspaper. Then all women were expelled, except for 2 elderly ladies. According to Reporters Without Borders, over half of registered media outlets have ceased operations. More than 80% of female journalists and media workers have lost their careers, reducing their numbers from 1,190 to fewer than 240. Nadia, a journalist in Balkh, also lost her job after the Taliban's return. This situation has had a negative impact on all aspects of my life, spiritually, mentally, and economically. It has taken away all my hope and motivation for life. Every day I wake up hoping to see the Taliban gone, so I can return to my previous life, fulfill my duties, and live with hope and motivation. But every day, I wake up to the Taliban still in power, taking away all the rights of women and girls. I hope one day we can regain our rights. Since the beginning of their control over Afghanistan, the Taliban's restriction on media and journalists, especially women, have only continued to expand. The group has issued 17 restrictive edicts against the media in the past 2.5 years. These edicts include those preventing women from working in the country's national radio and television, segregating workplaces for women and men, and requiring women to wear masks on camera and on stage. Recently, the regime prohibited airing women's voices in Helmand and banned radios in Khost to receive calls on air from women audiences. Since the Taliban came to power, we are not allowed to work outside media building. We cannot prepare reports on topics important to society. I was interested in reporting on people's lives and conveying their voices to authorities. But unfortunately, in Balkh province, no female journalist is allowed to participate in press conferences or go to the city to report. Even inside the office, there are many restrictions. Because of Taliban limitations, media officials treat female journalists differently, making it very difficult for us to work, and they always say we are replaceable. Afghanistan once had one of the most vibrant media scenes in the region. Nearly 3 years later now, there are no female journalists or media staff in at least 15 out of the country's 34 provinces. Firishta Ghani, an editor at Zan Times, a women-led media platform established abroad after the Taliban came to power, explained how Taliban restrictions have pushed women journalists to work covertly and has made them vulnerable to exploitation by media managers. As editor of Zan Times, I'm in contact with dozens of journalists in Afghanistan, and I have learned that the situation of women journalists is very dire, beyond the reports of Taliban's restrictions on women journalists. The first significant change that occurred with the Taliban's return was the confiscation of women's journalists' identity. This is the biggest blow to a journalist who cannot report under her own name and has to conduct interviews secretly. The second is the exploitation of the situation by some local media officials in Afghanistan. A female journalist in Badakhshan told Zan Times in February 2023 that beside her, 54 other female journalists work without receiving any salary. The office also confirmed this issue, stating that dozens of female journalists in Herat, Badakhshan, Parwan, Kabul, Samangan, and Balkh work without receiving payments, while male journalists receive monthly salaries.